How's it going, everybody? Gary Simon here. So form design, it's one of the things that I notice my students and subscribers struggle with the most. And so today within Figma, I'm going to show you exactly how to design an actual form with interactive prototyping and the different states that accompany form elements, such as your default state, your focus state, your typed in state, and an error state. So I'm confident after watching this little mini crash course, so to speak, on form design, that you really should have a much stronger ability to design great forms. So as always, let's get started. Now, chances are if you're watching this video, you probably want to be a better designer. And if that's the case, how much do you really want it? Because at DesignCourse.com, I've created a UI UX course that will help you go from designing layouts that I might rate a 4 or 5 up to 8 and beyond. But more important than that, as a better designer, this means that you can land higher paying clients and jobs. This course includes over 16 hours of video, 40 interactive UI design tests, and even mentorship where I personally take a look at your work that you submit, I review it, and many times I also revise it, providing you with great feedback to help you become a better designer. Now, for this video, I want you to use the coupon code UI2022, and that will give you 22% off at checkout. All right, so let's get started here in Figma. Now, I'm going to start with a mobile iPhone 13 Pro Max preset right there, and this could be applicable though, same exact thing to a tablet or desktop. So don't worry about that. Now, next up, what I'm going to do is two different things. I'm going to give this a background color outside of just being white. When it comes to form design elements, if you can not use absolute black and not use absolute white, it can be helpful. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm just going to go slightly off-white, right around E7, E7, E7 for the color code. And then the second thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the layout grid. And it's a good idea to get used to this, if only for the only reason so that you can really see you can start to utilize proper consistent white space on the left and right to contain your layout essentially. So I'm going to choose columns, and you can use the 12 column grid or whatever if you want. Obviously it'd be like a 4 column grid for mobile, but we're just going to choose one because the only thing I'm interested in is setting a margin and seeing exactly where the white space is equal on the left and right. So for a mobile white space, I might use just like 30, and then now we can see on the very left and right we have an equal amount of white space, and we could choose to position our various our UI elements rather, so that there's equal white space on the right and left. Don't just guess it. All right, so now what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and just get some type on. So we're first going to have a label. Usually forms will have a title of some sort indicating the action that you want the user to take. So we're going to say create in account, just like that, and we want this to be the largest element, so typographic visual hierarchy, very important. It's just whatever's the most important element should be the thing that catches the eye the most. So we do that, and we achieve that with font size, font weight, color as well, color and contrast. So we're also going to make this bold, and we'll choose my favorite font, Popman's, and we're going to make this large, maybe something like 28. Which is pretty, as you can see, for the context of this iPhone 13 Pro Max frame, it's pretty large. So next up, let's start actually creating the input field, or the text field rather. So first, we're going to have a label. One of the core fundamentals of good form design is always having a label, no matter what. The label should always be present, and you'll see what I mean when we proceed. Because some people don't always do that. So we're going to just say first name. All right. Now, sometimes people will put name. That's a little bit vague. Do you want the first and last name? Or are you going to create two different text fields for that? Just be explicit about it. So I'm going to choose for the font size. We can't leave it here, right? Because now it's competing for too much space. That would look ridiculous. Again, that's a lack of visual hierarchy. So to establish that said visual hierarchy, we're going to make this something more like 18. All right. And then we could also either leave it bold or just regular, and that further increases and establishes that visual hierarchy. Now, at this point, this is where these this column comes into play in the white space on the left and right. You can see I've already chose to left align everything along this column right here. And I'm going to take the rectangle tool and just drag out from the very left and right. Sometimes I'll see people do something like this and then leave a bunch of empty white space over here, but you have no room to put anything. There can't be a second column of content. Drag this sucker out all the way. Now, next up is a consideration. Let me just go ahead and hide that. Is the height of the text field. And this isn't just text fields. It could be text areas. It could be select menus. It could be checkboxes, etc. The height. You have to imagine when you have somebody typing in something in here, how much white space is on the inside or the padding on the inside of the element. So you want to make sure there's a sweet spot. You certainly, for a text field, you wouldn't want to go this large, but you also don't want to go this small. So you have to make sure you really mind your white space. And then your white space for on the inside you'll help establish that when we actually put type on the inside to indicate what it looks like when somebody's typing inside the text field. So now, another consideration is this background color, which is only slightly darker than the background it's sitting on, is that okay in terms of contrast? No, it's not. You would either, if you want to keep this color, you need to add a stroke as well. Now, the stroke can be anywhere from black, but I wouldn't go lighter than somewhere around a mid-gray. If you go up here, then it becomes almost invisible still, so people with vision issues wouldn't be able to see it correctly. You want to come around, probably somewhere right around here. And instead of going darker for the background, because we have a slightly dark, not 100% white background that it's sitting on, we can go white with this as well. And that kind of just brings focus to it rather than just making it darker. So I like this right here for the height, the background, the stroke color. I think this is a good, solid text field. So we also want to design for what it looks like when somebody actually types in this text field. All right, so we're going to take this, we're going to duplicate the label, we're going to use our bracket keys. The right bracket key brings it forward, and we're going to make it slightly smaller at size 16 from 18, and then we'll go ahead and just put in John Doe, and we will give this some color, or change the color rather. And we're not going to give it color, we're just going to make it darker, lighter rather. So this is increasing that visual hierarchy. So, from 18 to 16, that's pretty close. We could do this. We could just make this bold, all right, and that's fine as well. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. But another way you could take it is just to make this text maybe somewhere right around here. So there's a lot of subjectivity in terms of the choices you want to make, of course, when we're talking about design. So for me, I'm probably just going to make this. You could go semi-bold as well. And I think I like that. So we'll just do that. And then finally, we also want to have an error state. And we're going to bring all of this together with component variants and prototype it as well. So just hang with me. So next, we're going to take, we'll just duplicate this. And we're going to say there was, well, you don't want to have vague error messages. I guess you could say, this is a ridiculous one for your name. We'll also say like this, no special characters are allowed. All right, so we'll just assume somebody put John Doe ! Like that. There we go. Now, visual hierarchy. Again, you don't want to style this error message type the same as the type that's above. So we can go down to smaller, size 14. And by the way, I wouldn't ever go smaller than size 14 for type. And then we can also, when it comes to an error message, you really want that thing to stick out. So visual hierarchy, you want it to grab a person's attention first and foremost after they input text or something like that or try to submit a form. So we're going to make it red. All right. Now we're also going to make the outline. That's another common pattern. The outline of the form element that is in question, that's an error. So we're going to take that and we're going to use our same red color. All right, great. Now, also, if you want, you can add an icon. So I'm going to go to our plugins, Iconify, and that's a free plugin you can use for icons and using them quickly. We can just do error. I'll use this circular one. We'll drag it out right there, close that, change the selection color here to a red. make it a little bit smaller. Get that positioned up. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to group these up, those two elements. I'm also going to take this. By the way, I'm going to take that stroke and just get back here to this mid color. And now that we have all of our elements that we're going to need for our components and our component variants, we can go ahead and start situating this correctly. So the first thing before we create the actual component, I want to take these two elements right here, and we're going to create an auto layout up here in the upper right. Now when you do that, it's going to condense it like that, and that's okay. Over here, you want to choose this one. We want to keep it left aligned and vertically centered. So when I drag that out, this text is going to stay put to the left, if that makes sense. All right. So the right now it's not important. Like for me to bring back the grid, for instance, to make sure that this is all the way to the right, because we're going to be removing this anyways, and we could do that after the fact anyhow. So not a big deal there. Now we can also take all three. We could do a auto layout here if you wish, although it would never make sense because, for instance, if I hit auto layout, it does give me the option to like put the label underneath and like move these things around, but we would never want to do that anyway. So we really don't need an auto layout for that portion. So now what we could do is just click up here to create a component, and then we click plus to create a component variant. But before we do that, notice if we try to change the size, because we've now created a component out of it, this is no longer responding by changing the bounding box width. So you can fix that. We can double click into here, and then right up under here where it says fixed, well, we don't want HUD contents. Let's do auto layout here, because I think that's going to fix that issue. So now, there we go, fill container. And now right here, it's going to fill the container. All right, so if for no other reason, we take that these three elements and create a component or creating an auto layout. That way we have access to not just HUD contents, but fill container, which is right here. Okay, great. Now we create, we click plus up here to add a variant. Now at this point, I'm just going to replicate this. We're going to delete everything here, and I'm going to move this over here. And that way I can see, otherwise if you just drag it out here, you're gonna have a hard time seeing what's being designed. So we're just gonna drag this right here. And now we can start working on the variants of our component. So a couple things. What we'll do here first is, I'm gonna delete that one. We're going to take this, and anything we don't wanna see by default, we're gonna hide it. So the first variant is going to be the default view where a person hasn't clicked or selected or typed anything inside of the actual text field. It's going to be the default state. So we're going to put 0 there. Same thing with this, the error message, we're going to put 0 into pass-through as well. All right, so that's our default state. It's named default right there, and that's where we could change the property names. So we'll go ahead and click plus here, or just duplicate this. All right, so next up is going to be what happens when somebody, you could do a hover state if you wish for like desktop. I'm not going to bother with that. We're going to need to do a, when somebody clicks into this, what happens? So first thing we'll do before we forget is just going to be focus. This is our focus state right there. So focus, typically what you want to do is take a stroke on your text field and either make it darker and or make it a thicker stroke. And then that way it's a real easy way to provide a visual cue that this is the particular text field or form element that you're working with, that you're about to type into or whatever. So we take our stroke and we can make it black. We could also put it up to maybe 1.5 or so for the stroke size or the weight. And there we go. We could see a clear distinction between the default border and this newly selected one. And it becomes way more obvious when you have multiple form elements next to each other. So I think that was pretty solid right there for the actual state in which it's selected. And that's all we need to do. Then we just go ahead and click on prototype. We drag an interaction here. And then what we say is on tap, change to. That's perfect. And also, we don't need animation for this, so we just leave it at instant rather than adding like smart animate or something like that. Then, well, before we do that, let's go ahead and just drag. We go to our assets. We'll drag this on here. And then we'll go ahead and select this frame and click play. That way we can see that our first interaction, if that works or not. So we click it, and there we go. Now, if we click it again, we'll want it to do something else. So we want to show what it looks like when somebody's actually typed in to the form, right? Because we do have that text field. So we double click here, there's an invisible layer. We can bring that back. So we say 100%. All right, here, let's get this these evened out a little bit better. Now we go back to prototype. We select this one, and we'll just leave it at click, on tap rather. And that one's going to simply instant change to on tap, perfect. So everything's there that needs to be there. We also want to make sure we name this. This is going to be typed. We'll just call that typed. And now if we go back and we click it, there we go. All right, so now what about if there's an error? If we add another one. So the error, we're going to duplicate or double click into this area where we get the stroke. We're going to make it a red color. We're also going to bring this out. And we're going to change the pass-through from 0 to 100. All right, we're going to go back to prototype. We'll bring this back on change to, instant, etc., etc. And then finally, once we click this, we'll go back to the first default state. So that gives your client, your stakeholders, etc., a way to quickly click onto these into prototype here within Figma to see what all the various states look like. So if we go back, there we go. So here's focus, here's typed, here's error, and then here's default. Awesome, awesome stuff. So next up, what about floating label designs, right? You might be curious about how would you prototype that. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is take this right here, and we are going to detach the instance and create a floating label component along with its associated component variants. So to do that, what I'm going to do is we will, let's see here, we're just going to delete that, which is the empty one. We're going to put this one inside of there. All right. Then we'll take these, we'll create a component out of them. Oh, and by the way, I probably wouldn't want to make this bold like that for a label. I would probably just leave it at regular, and that's good right there. Okay, so now we'll make a component, add a variant. Let's make this larger. We'll put this one right here. All right, first name. When somebody clicks on it, what happens then? All right, well, we're going to, this time, because it's a part of a auto layout, I'm going to take this and in here and then get rid of that auto layout. And then I'll also ungroup it by right click. Never mind. What I'll do is just take this with my keyboard arrow keys and just move it up where it's going to be. And then also make it smaller to like size 16. All right, and there we go. I think that's all we need to do. And then also, it's because it's focused, we want to take this, make it there, black, and then 1.5. And then we'll go to prototype. This is going to be on click, or on tap rather. I keep on saying click. And then we'll just go back just to show a quick prototyping of those two. So now if we go to assets, we'll drag the first one in, and then we'll go to the other artboard if it's here. Where's that at? All right, so sometimes issues can occur. This is called, if I go to layer, this is called frame 2. We should just call this floating label. Now if we go back to our assets, floating label, there we go. All right. So let's put this one like right here just to have 2 examples. And we click it. Oh, now this would make sense because something's physically moving to go to prototype over here rather. We'll select this connection and just choose Smart Animate. Leave it at 300 milliseconds. Same thing with this one, Smart Animate. Now it's going to be much better. So this is default state. And then here is the focus state. And if you wanted to, you could add more variants where this one, for instance, is also has like a typed in value and stuff like that in an error state. So now let's also go ahead, let's delete that one, and let's go ahead and create maybe another form element where we say this is the email address. And then we'll have, for the final thing we'll do, and this is very super simple. If you could do this stuff and this stuff over here, you can do a button. And that's what we'll do real quick. So we're just gonna have a button that says create account. Hit R for rectangle. And we will put a bracket key, a left bracket, to put that underneath it. For the fun of it, we'll go ahead to plugins, iconify, and we'll just say right. We'll throw this one in. There we go. Let's extend this because I'm going to want a little bit more room. We're going to put this right here. Now let's also talk about the color of your primary call to action, your submit button for your form. You want it to really, really stand out, more so than any other element, because without them clicking this, none of this means anything, right? Unless you're doing some crazy JavaScript async stuff, but you're typically not doing that. So whatever your primary color is, that's what I suggest to use for your color theme. So I'm going to use maybe, I really like this color over here. Let's drag this to the right around there, I guess would be fine. And then we obviously lack contrast, so we need to make these elements both white. All right. Now, once you have this all kind of aligned up, we could take these 2 elements, make them a group first, and then choose auto layout. And we'll center that vertically and horizontally so that we can do this if we ever need to resize it as such. So next up, I might want to make this a little bit, stop that. There we go, a little bit wider. All right, so next up what we'll do is create our component variant. We'll drag this over here, and you could have multiple states for your component variants for a button. For instance, let's do a hover state. So for the hover state, you could just make it slightly lighter. I like going lighter than darker typically. Something like this. You don't want to go like that and then change the text to black. That's too much of a change on hover. I would just say something very subtle like that, and that would work just fine. All right, so if we come over here to prototype, we'll go ahead and add just a while hovering. And yeah, I think that's all we'll do. You could do a pressing state if you want, like while pressing or whatever. I'll leave that to you. But now let's go back to our assets, drag this on, put it like right around here. So honestly, with a full create an account sort of form, you would probably have a checkbox to agree to terms. This is already a long tutorial, so it's the same process. By the way, I have to say, if you've established an aesthetic for your text fields or any other form element when you're getting started, like your background and it has a stroke, stick with that same exact aesthetic for your checkboxes, your radio buttons, your text areas, your select menus, etc. Because I see people mix and match things. Like sometimes people would put a checkbox here without a stroke when it's just a white background, and it just makes it inconsistent. So don't do that. So there we go. So we have our hover state, very simple. We have our error states, and we also did a floating label as well. Awesome, awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. So anyhow, if you're really interested in learning more about UI UX design in general, I can't stress this enough, definitely check out DesignCourse.com. Use the coupon code UI2022 to get 22% off. If you also live in an area around the world where the US dollar is just way stronger than your local currency, you will also potentially get off more of that through parity pricing. So definitely check it out. And ask me any questions through live chat if you wish. Make sure to subscribe here, and I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.